The Galactic arena was packed, buzzing with the anticipation of violence. Thousands of alien spectators, from towering reptilians to gelatinous blobs with multiple eye stalks, chattered excitedly in their respective languages. The Coliseum's announcer, a multi-lunge creature with a voice like grinding metal, boomed through the speakers, presenting a new challenger to the prestigious gladiatorial circuit, a species so unimpressive we nearly forgot to announce him. A ripple of laughter coursed through the crowd. Even the other gladiators, standing in their designated pits, sneered as the gates rumbled open. Out stepped a human. Average height, no claws, no scales, no reinforced bone plating. Just a man in simple combat gear, rolling his shoulders as he surveyed the arena like he was scoping out a new gem. Behold! The announcer coughed, as if forcing himself to continue. A human from a primitive death world known as Earth. The laughter doubled. Someone in the stands choked on their drink. One of the larger competitors, a hulking brute from the war-born clans, grinned down at the human. Ha! What's it going to do? Talk us to death? Another gladiator, an insectoid warrior, clacked its mandibles. I hear humans can't even regrow limbs. What a pathetic excuse for a species. The human sighed, stretching his arms over his head. All right, let's get this over with. The announcer, still chuckling, introduced the first opponent. The gates opposite the humans groaned open, and out stomped a towering beast, 7 feet of muscle, tusks, and war trophies dangling from his armor. The arena erupted into cheers. This was Crag the Butcher, known for snapping smaller fighters in half like dry twigs. Crag snorted, slamming a fist against his chest. You die fast, human. I make sure of it. The human tilted his head. You sure? I'd hate for you to lose in front of all your fans. The crowd roared with amusement. Crag, to his credit, wasn't the type to be goaded into mistakes. He merely grinned, tusks gleaming. You think you're a funny little creature? Sometimes, the human admitted, depends on the audience. A gong rang. The fight had begun. Crag wasted no time. He charged, the ground trembling beneath his feet. The audience leaned forward, expecting a swift and gruesome end. Then Crag's momentum halted. No, he didn't just stop. He staggered, clutching his throat. Confusion rippled through the arena. Had the human even moved? Crag dropped to his knees. The sneer on his face melted into disbelief. He reached out, as if to grab the human, before slumping forward with a loud thud. Dead. Silence. One of the war-born warriors in the stands blinked. Wait, what just happened? The announcer sputtered. Well, that was unexpected. The human adjusted the combat gloves on his hands. Thought he'd last longer. The realization hit like a thunderbolt. The human hadn't even used a weapon. He'd just moved. Fast. Too fast for Crag to react. The war-born in the audience let out a nervous laugh. All right, beginner's luck. Let's see how he handles an actual challenge. The next opponent was summoned. Then another, and another. Each one fell. Some never even saw it coming. The insectoid warrior who had mocked human biology got a first-hand lesson in what a shattered exoskeleton felt like. A cybernetically enhanced fighter, designed for peak performance, found himself outmaneuvered and systematically dismantled. The crowd's amusement morphed into confusion. Then concern. Someone in the stands muttered, "That's not normal." The war-born warrior from earlier, now visibly uncomfortable, turned to his comrade. How many has he killed? The bookkeepers were scrambling. The betting odds had shifted from instant human defeat to, please make it stop. The human cracked his neck, wiping blood from his knuckles. So, is this the part where you all start taking me seriously, or do I have to keep embarrassing you? The arena was deathly silent. The arrogance, the mockery, all of it had drained away like someone had pulled the plug on a cosmic joke. Then, from the highest balcony, a slow clap echoed through the air. The Coliseum's champion had finally taken notice. The real fight was about to begin. The champion stood atop the balcony, watching the human with an expression that wasn't quite amusement, but not yet concern. He was a colossus of a warrior, clad in armor adorned with golden filigree and ancient battle scars. His name was Rocker the Unyielding. Undefeated for over a decade, a legend among gladiators, the audience, which had started the day in smug amusement, was now eerily silent. Even the bookkeepers, who had once joked about the human's immediate demise, were nervously adjusting the betting odds, their fingers twitching over the holographic screens. This was no longer sport. This was an anomaly. Rocker finally spoke, his voice carrying across the stunned Colosseum. "Human, you fight well. Too well." The human, who, for the record, was just getting warmed up, tilted his head. "I'll take that as a compliment." The champion leaned forward, resting both massive hands on the railing. "I have killed warriors from every corner of the galaxy. I know how they move. I know how they think." He gestured at the scattered remains of the human's previous opponents. "I do not know this." The human exhaled, rolling his shoulders. "Yeah, well, that's because your guys fight like you're starring in an action holovid. Big swings, lots of screaming. Pretty predictable, really." He gestured toward one of the fallen aliens, who still had a look of betrayal frozen on his lifeless face. "This guy tried to hit me with some kind of over-the-top war cry before attacking. Took a solid 3 seconds. You know how much time that gives someone like me?" Rocker's eyes narrowed. "And what exactly are you? Efficient." The champion watched him for a long moment. Then he smirked. "Then perhaps it is time you face someone less predictable." The gates rumbled open. From the darkness emerged 3 figures. These were not ordinary gladiators. Their armor was leaner, darker, unmarked by the usual showmanship of the Colosseum's combatants. These were specialists, the arena's real enforcers, used only when a challenger needed to be handled. The crowd collectively exhaled. This was better. This was controlled. The announcer, who had been practically choking on his own uncertainty, found his voice again. "Ah, yes. It seems our guest has done well, but now he will face the Shadow Triumvirate." The human raised an eyebrow. "Oh no. 3 guys. What am I going to do?" One of the warriors lunged before the announcer could even finish his dramatic build-up. The alien moved with a blur's speed, faster than anything else the human had fought so far. The strike was meant to be instant, over before the audience could blink. Instead, the human sidestepped, grabbed the attacker's wrist, and with an almost casual flick of movement, redirected the momentum. The enforcer barely had time to register the shift before his own blade was embedded in his throat. The remaining 2 hesitated. The human let out a breath. "You guys trained together?" They hesitated again. "Because if you do, you really should have learned not to attack one at a time." It was hard to tell who moved first, the remaining enforcers or the human. But in the end, it didn't matter. The first collapsed with a crushed windpipe before he could even register the human, had closed the distance. The second had enough time to look horrified before a boot met his jaw with a force that sent him sprawling. Then nothing. The audience, once again, was silent. Even the announcer had no words. He simply let the mic drop with an awkward thunk. The human looked up at the champion. Was that less predictable? Rocker was no longer smirking. Slowly, the Colossus stood, stepping onto the edge of the balcony. The air in the arena changed. The silence was no longer one of shock, but something heavier. Anticipation. The champion hopped down, not from a staircase, not from an elevator, from the balcony. The sheer force of his landing cracked the stone beneath his feet. The human let out a low whistle. "All right, that's kind of cool." The champion rolled his shoulders. "Theatrics are for fools. I only fight when it matters." The human flexed his fingers, cracking his knuckles. "Good. I was worried this whole place was just a circus act." Rocker smirked again. "It is. But you've made it interesting." The announcer, finally regaining his ability to function, cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, we now witness a true test. The undefeated champion, Rocker the Unyielding, against the anomaly, the human." The crowd, hesitant at first, erupted into cheers, not because they had faith in the human, but because Rocker was finally getting serious. The champion raised his fists. No tricks. No quick strikes in the dark. Just a fight. The human exhaled. Sounds fair. The gong rang, and they charged. The moment the gong rang, Rocker moved like a living avalanche. Unstoppable, relentless, and terrifyingly fast for a warrior of his size. His fists came down like sledgehammers, each strike capable of turning bones into dust. The human barely managed to sidestep the first blow, the sheer force of the impact cracking the arena floor where he had stood just milliseconds ago. "Okay," the human muttered, rolling his shoulders. "So we're skipping the warm-up. Got it." Rocker didn't reply. He was already mid-swing, a vicious backhand that could have sent a lesser fighter into orbit. But the human ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air as the blow narrowly missed. He retaliated instantly, delivering a sharp jab to the champion's side. It felt like punching a statue. "Ow," he muttered, shaking out his hand. That was a bad idea. Rocker's smirk was brief. He didn't gloat. He didn't taunt. He just moved. The next strike caught the human square in the chest, sending him skidding backward in the dirt. For the first time since stepping into the arena, he felt the true weight of the challenge before him. This wasn't a showboating warrior who relied on intimidation. This was a fighter. The crowd roared, sensing the shift in battle. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The human wasn't just some anomaly anymore. He was prey. "Still breathing?" Rocker asked, rolling his massive shoulders. The human exhaled sharply and got to his feet. "Just making sure all my ribs are still where they belong." He took a quick inventory. "Yep, mostly." Rocker chuckled. Then he attacked again. The next few minutes were a blur of motion. Dodges so narrow they felt like a hair's width from disaster, counterstrikes that barely found their mark, and blows that sent shockwaves through the arena. The human wasn't just fast. He was unpredictable. He moved in ways Rocker had never seen before, angles that made no sense, footwork that defied the rhythm of battle. And yet, Rocker was adapting. The champion started anticipating the human's dodges, adjusting his swings to follow up quicker, cutting off escape routes. He was a brawler, but a smart one. He had spent years breaking down fighting styles, learning from the best, and dismantling their techniques. And right now he was learning. The human noticed. "That's cheating," he huffed between dodges. "You're supposed to just be big and strong. Where's the dumb brute routine?" "I outgrew it," Rocker replied, driving a knee forward. The human barely twisted in time to avoid having his ribs shattered. "Yeah, well, you're really ruining the stereotype here." Rocker swung. The human ducked. And then, finally, he found his opening. With a speed that defied logic, the human surged forward and climbed the champion. He used Rocker's own arm as leverage, flipping onto his shoulders in one swift motion. Before the warrior could react, the human locked his legs around his opponent's neck and twisted. The maneuver sent the massive warrior stumbling forward, off balance for the first time. The audience gasped. This was unheard of. Rocker had never been forced into a vulnerable position, let alone one where he nearly fell. But nearly wasn't enough. With sheer brute strength, Rocker ripped the human from his shoulders and hurled him like a rag doll. The human hit the dirt hard, rolling with the impact to avoid a broken spine. Still, everything hurt. He groaned. "Okay, that was a lot." Rocker exhaled, shaking out his arms. "I will admit," he said, "I did not expect that." The human spat out a bit of blood and wiped his mouth. "Yeah, well, surprises are kind of my thing." The two stared at each other for a long moment. The crowd was holding its breath. Then, to everyone's shock, Rocker smiled. "A worthy opponent," he muttered. "At last." The human arched an eyebrow. "So what? You don't just kill me now and claim victory." Rocker shook his head. "Where's the honor in that?" He gestured around them. "These fights were never meant to be one-sided executions. They are meant to prove worth, strength, skill." He cracked his knuckles. "And you, human, have proven both." The audience murmured. This was not how fights usually ended. The human wiped more blood from his lip, watching the champion carefully. "So, what now?" Rocker's smile widened. "Now, He slammed his fists together. Now we fight properly. The human groaned. Oh, come on. And then, with renewed intensity, they clashed once more. The air in the arena was electric, thick with tension and disbelief. No one had ever seen a fight last this long. No one had ever seen a challenger push the great rocker this far. The Galactic champion, the undefeated warrior of 100 battles, was breathing hard, sweat glistening against his dark skin. And standing across from him, battered but grinning, was the human, the silence stretched, heavy with the weight of something unspoken. Then, from the upper decks, a single voice bellowed out, "Finish him." The crowd surged, voices rising in unison, demanding an end. This was not a place for drawn-out contests. The arena existed for spectacle, for swift and brutal victories. But Rocker did not move. He was staring at his opponent, studying him with something that looked disturbingly close to respect. The human wiped at his mouth, smearing away the blood trickling from his split lip. "I gotta ask," he called out, voice hoarse from exertion. "Do you always take this long to kill someone, or am I just special?" Rocker huffed out a breath that might have been a laugh. "You are special," he admitted. "Most would have fallen hours ago." "Hours? Feels like years." The human stretched his neck with an audible pop. "Look, I get the whole warrior's pride thing, but some of us don't have unlimited stamina." He motioned toward himself. "I'm running on nothing but adrenaline, spite, and an unreasonable fear being turned into a floor decoration." The champion tilted his head. "You still stand. That is enough." The crowd wasn't satisfied with this vague exchange. They wanted a decisive finish. A spectacle. Blood. The announcer's voice cut through the noise, amplified across the stadium. "Rocker, champion of the Galactic Arena, you have fought well, but the crowd demands a victor. Will you grant the final blow?" Rocker turned his gaze toward the elevated throne where the arena's ruler sat. His expression darkened. The expectation was clear. Execute the human, claim his victory, and move on to the next challenger. That was how things worked. That was how it had always worked. But something had shifted in the great warrior. He looked back at the human, who was watching with an eyebrow raised. "So what's it going to be, big guy? You putting me down, or are we hugging it out?" The absurdity of the statement made Rocker exhale sharply. "You are a strange creature. And you're just figuring that out now?" The champion's muscles tensed. His expression hardened. He turned to the audience, raising a fist high above his head, a gesture that had always signaled the coming of the final blow. The crowd erupted in approval, expecting the inevitable. And then Rocker dropped his fist. The arena fell silent. Then he did something no one had ever seen him do before. He knelt. Gasps rippled through the stands. The rulers of the arena shot to their feet in outrage. This was not part of the script. The champion was meant to win. He was meant to kill. But instead, Rocker spoke, his voice steady and unyielding. "I have fought warriors of every species, from the battle-hardened legions of Zelvari to the merciless warlords of the Drelka, and none have challenged me as you have." He met the human's gaze. "Today, I do not claim victory. I yield." The silence was deafening. Then, like a storm breaking, the arena erupted. Some cheered, overwhelmed by the sheer insanity of the moment. Others booed, furious that the expected bloodshed had been denied. The rulers shouted down from their throne, demanding order, demanding the fight be finished. The human blinked, looking around as the chaos unfolded. "Ha!" he muttered. "Did not see that coming." Two heavily armored enforcers entered the pit, weapons drawn. "Champion Rocker, you dishonor the traditions of the arena," one barked. "By decree of the high rulers, you will—" He never got to finish his sentence. With one fluid motion, Rocker was on his feet again. He turned, caught the enforcer's wrist mid-strike, and crushed it. The alien screamed, his weapon clattering to the ground. The second enforcer hesitated, just long enough for Rocker to seize his weapon and hurl him backward. Now the crowd was really losing it. The human took a cautious step back. "Big guy, I appreciate the dramatic gesture, but I'd kind of like to not die in a gladiator riot." Rocker turned to him, a wild glint in his eye. "Then let us not linger." The human opened his mouth to protest, But the champion was already moving, charging toward the gates with the force of a battering ram. The human had exactly half a second to process the situation before sprinting after him. Behind them, chaos erupted. The rulers shouted for their guards to subdue the rogue champion. Spectators leaped from their seats, some in celebration, others in outrage. More enforcers poured into the pit, weapons blazing. Rocker tore through them like a hurricane. The human, for his part, dodged and weaved through chaos, occasionally delivering a well-placed punch or kick when necessary. They reached the main gate just as a security lockdown was initiated. A massive blast door began to lower, thick and impenetrable. The human cursed. "We're not making it through that in time." Rocker disagreed. With a roar, he launched himself forward, gripping the edge of the descending door. His muscles bulged, veins straining as he held it in place. The human stared. Are you holding up a 10-ton blast door?" Rocker gritted his teeth. "Move, human." Never one to argue with someone doing the impossible. The human dove through the gap. Rocker followed, releasing the door just as it slammed shut behind them. Alarms blared. The entire arena was now on high alert. The human dusted himself off. "So, do we have a plan, or are we just making this up as we go?" Rocker exhaled. "The rulers will send hunters after us. We must leave this planet before they can mobilize." The human gave him a long look. "You realize you just threw away your entire career, right?" Rocker straightened, his expression unreadable. "I have fought for many years, won countless battles. Yet, today is the first time I have ever felt truly free." The human considered this, then grinned. "You know what? I think I like you." The distant sounds of pursuit grew closer. The human clapped his hands together. "All right, big guy, let's get the hell out of here." And with that, they ran. Later, when the legend of the greatest gladiator upset in history was told across the stars, they would call it the day a champion knelt before a human.